and away we go. First, as you can see in the chat, we've got a super cool group of people from all over the state, and I appreciate each and every one of you joining and sharing time and space with me this evening on this very, very cold Wisconsin evening. So thank you for that, first and foremost. And then just a quick introduction. So you know who I am. My name's Amy Mueller. For those of you that don't know me, I have been a Wisconsin resident my entire life, and I currently am coming to you from my home in the town of Ottawa in western Waukesha County. And I need to start off with an important disclaimer. I am not a member or have anything to do with the Conservation Congress. And you're all wondering, well, what the hell are we doing here then? What I am is a concerned citizen, and I'm a wildlife advocate. In the past year, I've been particularly concerned with the wolf issues going on here in our state. I'm also a very active member of the Sierra Club Wildlife Team, and I support several other organizations in addition to that. But the overall goal tonight is really to gather like-minded folks from across the state and many different types of groups to work together in a more strategic way than we have maybe in the past. I hope to organize the different types of people that maybe traditionally the Wisconsin Conservation Congress wouldn't necessarily reach out to or to promote themselves to. I'm looking at maybe more progressive types, environmentalists, advocates. It's really exactly what the WCC needs. It needs more cultural and gender diversity. It needs ethnic representation. And furthermore, it needs a broader focus other than just hunting, trapping, and fishing, quite honestly. So in the last year, I've been fortunate enough to connect with other passionate folks that share the same vision. And essentially, our hope is to do the outreach that the WCC might not, and essentially create a overarching coalition that could over time shape the WCC as we know it today. So with that, we'll continue. All right, so tonight we are going to just have a quick agenda that I'll speak through. First, we need to kind of create a fundamental understanding of the Wisconsin Conservation Congress. I know we have a variety of experience levels on the line here. Then we'll go into 3 different ways that you can participate, including the spring hearings that are online, the WCC resolution process, and then possibly delegates, thinking about maybe for yourself. So lastly, we'll end with a call to action. And after that, then we'll open it up for questions, clarifying statements, comments, discussion, whatever we might need at that point. So my hope is that, you know, we'll have about 25 minutes of me kind of getting us to a point where we can all kind of chat. So that being said, we have several WCC members actually online, current and past. So if I get in any trouble or anybody asks me any questions that I can't field, they are here to jump in as well. So with that, this is what the WCC would tell you on their website. So they are a statutory body here in the state, and citizens elect delegates, and those delegates work on a variety of natural resource issues and policy. And initially, the little brief history lesson here is that it was developed in 1930, and one of the most famous founding members was Aldo Leopold. So it was legally recognized as a liaison between the Natural Resource Board and the DNR in the 1970s. So we are unique here in Wisconsin that we have this sort of taxpayer-funded statutory group. And it's really meant to be a way for citizens to influence how natural resources are managed, right? So that's the principal guiding light here. Now, the vision you'll see on the slide there is that it's ultimately put into play to strengthen and enhance our ability, convey the wisdom and influence of Wisconsin citizens in the formation of the policy, research, education, and conservation. So that's the big picture. That's what they would tell you. Essentially, it boils down to the WCC is ultimately made up of delegates, 5 delegates from each county, and we have 72 counties in Wisconsin. So I won't make anyone do any math, so I did it before. That's 360 delegates. And fun fact, the taxpayers cover all the projects, awards they give out, delegate travel reimbursement. So it is good for everyone on this call to have an understanding of what they do and what they're supposed to be doing, because we are paying for it. So I have the website there listed on the third bullet as a reference, because we could get into the history and more of what they do in nitty gritty, but I just wanted to kind of give a real basic overview. And with that said, I'll tell you what the website doesn't say, and this is where I get to give you my opinion as a non-member. I'd argue that one of the biggest problems the WCC has is that most people don't know that it even exists. That's probably their biggest issue. My current day view on the WCC is that you'll find most of the delegates voted onto the WCC, and many of aspects of how it's being run significantly lacks diversity in almost every way. I don't think anyone could debate that the WCC is disproportionately made up of hunters, trappers, and anglers. And being quite candid, it has a lot of curmudgeons. Again, my opinion. So in fact, if you go and look at their website or you look at their Facebook page, it does come off run more like a private hunting group than anything else. So again, my opinions, and I think more than fair. A lot of people share those. So go out and make some, look at it for yourself and evaluate, but that's kind of some of the challenges. The struggle is real here. So I want to be honest about that. However, there are some bright spots, and there's some really ethical go-getters that are delegates too, some of which are here with us tonight. And as I mentioned, we can better support their efforts, and we can amplify their actions if we can just get involved. So that's where I will leave the overview for the WCC. Now, there's a couple different ways we can do that. We can support those go-getters and those ethical folks that are in the trenches, so to speak. So one way is to essentially participate more. They have a spring hearing, they call it, but essentially this April 11th, an online survey will become available. And I'd like everybody on this meeting to vote, to plan to vote. It essentially is open for 72 hours online. So it'll run the 11th through the 13th. And it will be available at the WCC website, and I'll be happy to send out reminders to everybody that joined here this evening. And there's really two important statewide questions that I want to make sure to highlight for everybody. And the first is, we'd like you to support the banning of wildlife killing contests. That's the vile practice where people go out for cash and prizes and wipe out an entire species, largely unfairly targeted a lot of times at coyotes or other predators. And then the second thing I'd love for everyone on this meeting to be aware of to support would be banning the use of hounds when hunting wolves. That's by far a very questionable, controversial practice. We are the only state that does it. And if you remember back to the slaughter that happened last February, 86% of the wolves killed were taken with the use of hounds. So that is a really hot topic. And so we'd love for the Wisconsin public to come out and ethically support that and show to the WCC and to our lawmakers that this is really something that needs to be taken very seriously. So, and also, I think that all of us have a responsibility to not only vote ourselves, but to try to promote the voting within our own circles. So after this call, I'll be following up. I've been working with my inner circle of group. We have a very talented graphic designer who is helping make some flyers. So we'll have a print flyer and a electronic flyer that will have hot links for trying to get people to get out the vote. So stay tuned for that. So more to come. We've already been thinking and we're working ahead on that. All right, the next way that you can get involved with the WCC and kind of one step further, one way to get a little deeper into that spring hearing that I just talked about is by resolutions. They're not the resolutions that you made January 1st and have already abandoned, okay? That's a little different. But these are written by everyday citizens. They are going to be regarding natural resources, and typically you want them to be a statewide issue. They are ultimately reviewed by the delegates for completeness. They have to meet a certain criteria, and I'll cover that here in just a next second. And then they're voted on by your fellow citizens in your county. So let's go into what makes up a solid resolution. So this year, the resolution deadline to submit is considerably earlier than it has been in the past. So I want to make sure I highlight that for anybody that has participated. Right now, they are still finalizing when it will be due, but it is likely to be due March 11th. So I know that sounds far away, especially on the sub-zero temperatures we're having right now, but it's really not that far away. So keep that in mind. The character limit is the same as it was last year. So it would be 2,000 characters or less, and that does include spaces and punctuation. Each resolution is going to have 4 parts. So you're going to have a strong title, pretty simple, keep it short and sweet. You're going to have a problem, just kind of a problem statement. Don't go too long. And then you're going to have a suggested solution. And I would encourage everybody to focus on the sort of the positive outcomes of that solution. And then you're going to end with a yes or no, a closed question, because you want people to just be able to say, yes, I support this, or no, I don't. And I do want to note, just for some privacy issues, sometimes people are a little bit nervous. When you submit your resolution, your name, your address, and your email are all required, and they will be posted online with your resolution. So just so that's not a surprise to anyone. And again, here are just a couple of tips that I have found, and several of the other folks that have been doing this for a decade have found. Essentially, you want to keep your resolution very narrow in scope. You want to focus on the facts, because the more subjective it is, the more likely it is to be dismissed or debated. Focusing on those positive outcomes. And again, kind of keeping that audience in mind. This is a very, hunter, trapper, angler type community. So if you can outline any benefits to them, even indirectly, that's going to be a real selling point. So again, a little bit of the art of persuasion. And then also keep in mind that the DNR is looking to streamline regulations. So if you're adding regulation in your resolution, I would just, come prepared to explain why it's so important to do. And then sometimes this is hard, but I would encourage everyone to get feedback from others. That makes it a lot stronger. Oh, hold on, my poor dog is trying to hide a bone. But I would encourage you to talk to people, talk to friends. I'm certainly willing to help and circulate amongst anyone I can, but I think feedback from others only helps make the resolution stronger. And even getting that feedback from people that might not agree might prepare you for some of the arguments that people would make against it. So again, it's all good information. So with that, let's take a look at a couple examples of what an actual resolution is. So it's not just to lose 10 pounds. It is. Here is one that I wrote regarding the sandhill crane hunt that was just recently proposed in our state. So here you can see I have a title, and I can do some cool animation, I think. Let's try that. Right here, I've got my title, Oppose the Sandhill Crane Hunt. I have that problem that the sandhill crane population has only recently recovered from the brink of extinction. Last October, the state senators proposed SB 620 and a bill that will require the State Department of Natural Resources to establish a hunting season for sandhill cranes. So that's essentially the problem. I go on to support it with a few facts in terms of why this is a problem. And then we come down here and I have a solution right here where I say the Conservation Congress needs to formally oppose the SB 620 and the creation and any creation of a recreational hunt. And they should focus on the following considerations. And then I give some of those positive outcomes or things they could do instead. And my question here is, do you support the WCC taking a formal position against a recreational sandhill crane hunt in Wisconsin? So those are kind of just the basic pieces that you'd want. Here's another example that we've got for actually banning coyote killing contests. As I mentioned, those are those horrible contests where people go out and just kill for the fun of it and for entertainment and prizes and whatnot. And so one of the more horrific ones, and usually oftentimes the recipient of the, I guess, sort of lethal game is the coyote, because they're an unprotected species in our state. So we are thinking that if we could have coyotes be protected, that would help, so they are less of a target with this type of contest. So again, you can see we've got the problem here. We have the solution. We end with a question: does the WCC support advising the WDNR to develop and seek legislation to ban coyote killing contests? All right, and then here's just one last example I'll give you. And this sort of speaks to, I guess, the world we're living in these days. Previous to COVID, the Wisconsin Conservation Congress sort of functioned in a very isolated world. You know, they had their kind of meetups and their groups and their meetings, and they were all publicly reported on in minutes afterward. But now, in the last year and a half, 2 years, they have been using Zoom. And so it's been very easy for members of the public to just quickly pop in and attend a meeting. And it's much more inclusive than being notified that you need to drive to Wausau and back on a Saturday morning. So this is one resolution that's new for this year that we're hoping will get some traction, in that we're saying the problem in that the Conservation Congress meetings do not have equity, or in person do not have equity for delegates or the public due to unrealistic time commitments for travel distance, and expenses. And so we're trying to get them to always take a more virtual first approach. So we give a couple of facts from the University of Wisconsin-Madison on how virtual works these days. And ultimately, that's our solution. And then we come down here to our question: do you support that the WCC change their code of procedure to require all meeting types either have a remote first hybrid or virtual only meetings moving forward? Again, that makes it more available for people from all over the state to take part and to see what's going on. So we're hoping that we get some good traction. So that's at least gives you a kind of examples. I know I've broken every PowerPoint rule and law with all of that text on the slides, and I can send this to you after the meeting if it was difficult for you to see. But at least that gives you a little bit of a flavor of some of the resolutions that we have. Now, when it comes to resolutions, I want to mention something. Every Wisconsin resident is able to submit 2. Okay, so every resident can submit 2. And your option number 1, you could write your own resolution about something you're passionate about. And I encourage you to do so, because it comes from the heart and it means a lot to you. I think you should do that. Option number 2, especially if you are maybe new to this or just looking to sort of help out, I can tell you this: I have a treasure trove of resolutions that are pre-written that you could just submit in your county for us. And some of these resolutions include, as you can see on the right, sort of a menu of options there, including no night hunting, banning of chocolate bear bait, which we all know is toxic, and some of the ones we shared already, requiring hounds to have a training license, and things of that nature. So we have a variety that we're looking to place. So if you're open to that, it's pretty simple. I can send you the instructions, and the copy and paste process will probably take you about 5 minutes. So that is another option if you are looking to get more involved in the resolution process. So what I'm going to do is, I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to pause there. I'm going to do something fun. I have a little poll here. We're going to do a little pop quiz. I've talked a lot. Let's see what you learned. There are 3 questions. Go ahead and try to answer them if you can, if you're by your computer. If not, we can just play along. The first question is, how many citizen resolutions can each person submit to the WCC? The second question, what is the likely deadline to submit citizen resolutions this year? People are paying attention. All right. And then number 3 is, what are the key parts of a strong resolution? So I gave you the hint with the pick 4. So let's see how we're doing. It's kind of fun. We need a little interaction. So absolutely, I think the group here got it. 2 resolutions. You get 2. I wish it was more. I wish it was unlimited, but it's just 2 per person each year. And likely this year, again, soon to be finalized, but it will likely be March 11th. March 11th. And then the key parts we talked about, it's the title, it's the problem statement, it's the proposed solution, which I hope, is where you put the bulk of your copy. And then it's very important to end in a yes, no question. So if you send it in that type of format, I think you're going to sail right through the WCC approval process. So with that, I'm going to end the poll. Thank you guys for jumping in. And here we go. All right. So now we talked about the resolutions. We talked about the voting process. A very fair question would be what happens after the votes are counted at the county level. So if your resolution is successful, that means it passes with the popular vote in your county that you live in, it will then be assigned to a WCC advisory committee. So for example, last year I wrote a resolution on banning the use of hunting dogs with wolves. It was successful here in Waukesha. So then it was assigned to the wolf committee. And that wolf committee met in the fall. And I was notified by the DNR liaison, Kari, and she let me know that as an author, I could attend the meeting and I could speak to support it. So generally speaking, all of those committee meetings are in the fall. And it's always a great idea to attend that meeting if you can. So there is sort of this, spring submit online, which is probably only about 5 minutes or so. And then probably another small time commitment in the fall, ideally, if you can attend the meeting to support it. It can be as simple as, getting on that committee and just stating your name, why it's important to you in 30 seconds. Really, it's just the showing up that it really speaks volumes to the WCC. So I'd encourage everyone to do that. And then the committee will vote to either advance your resolution to the state level questionnaire for the following spring, or they reject it. Unfortunately, a lot get rejected for a variety of reasons, but have hope. There is a bright spot there. If your resolution was similar to that and passed in 2 other counties, so for 3 counties total, there is a little bylaw loophole that has proven very interesting. So they have a rule that if a resolution passes 2 years and 2 consecutive years in a row in the same 3 counties of Wisconsin, that then it will automatically move to the state level questionnaire as long as the author requests it. So that has been the journey of many of the advocates that have gone before me here on this call. So the banning of the wildlife killing contests had to sort of bypass a difficult committee to do that. And likewise with the wolf committee trying to get the banning of hunting with dogs, had to sort of bypass the committee to make it to that state level questionnaire this year. So bottom line is, if the committee rejects it, not all is lost. You may be just setting the stage for the following year to sort of pass it again in those same 3 counties. And then you can kind of, I guess, get right on that state level questionnaire that's so important. So there's a couple ways to win, and we're learning kind of how to play by the rules and still be successful. Now, I want to bring your attention here. So if you haven't ever visited the WCC page, it's within the DNR. And on the right here, you can see we've got meetings. That's where the public meetings are posted. And I'm here on the spring hearings tab. So this tells you a little bit about last year. They have not posted anything for this year. But there's a couple things I think that are noteworthy. First of all, last year, a whopping 12,600 people voted. Okay. I am no math whiz, and my background is in marketing, where they would not let me near any kind of numbers. But I know that that's less than 1% of our Wisconsin 5 million people population. So we need to get more, we absolutely need to get more participation in that survey, because it's supposed to be signaling what we as citizens value. And if less than 1% of people are voting, right, we need to get more people involved. So that's important. I also think it's super important that if you want to, you can check out what happened last year. It shows the 3 different types. So here was the statewide results. Here are the county results. And then here are the resolution results that I was talking about. Those are going to be by county. So that's what you really want to kind of check out. I'd also mention that there is a place here where you can go and look at all of all 360 of the Wisconsin delegate spots. It gives their name, it gives their address, it gives their phone number. So that's important to know who are your local delegates already representing you. And then it also gives the advisory committees. So with that, talking about delegates, I'm going to ask you a question and phrase it from one of my favorite movies. WCC delegates, maybe you. So right now, the election timeframes and process are still to be determined. We know that they are going to have to be virtual this year. So that's new and that's never been done. And they have a subcommittee assigned to try to figure out how to do that this year. It's usually in May. And if you've done it in the past, it's always been in person. So this is really throwing a gear in the process, throwing a wrench in the gears of the process. And I think it's going to be later this year that they figure out how to do that online securely. So stay tuned, more to come in this space. But the important takeaway here is that this year, there's 158 delegate spots open across the whole state. So again, math-wise, that's about a third turning over this year. So we have this tremendous opportunity to really bring in some fresh people, new perspective, and shift the dynamic of the WCC as we know it. So that's important. One other piece of the puzzle that I will mention that's super important, and one of the reasons I'd like to ask all of you to consider thinking about if you or someone you know would be a good WCC delegate, is that the WCC is often invited to be a part of the DNR's critical committees. You know, when they have an issue, and again, I'll give you one that's recent for me, the Wolf Management Plan Committee that was developed by the DNR. They had sort of weighted equally the hunter-trapper community versus the advocate and the education community. The WCC was on there as a statutory body. So unfortunately, what that entitles the WCC to right now, given the makeup, is that it sort of unfairly gives the advantage to the hunter-trapper community on those committees within the DNR. So if we could start to change that narrative, and we could start to get some different people in there, maybe a little more open-minded, a little bit more eco-friendly, that could change the dynamic of, you know, committee makeup and the input that the DNR gets too long-term. So not only is it, you know, the hearing and giving feedback that lawmakers might even look at and use, but it's also just that direct input to the DNR. So give that some thought. I want you to take some time and see if you could find it within yourself to run as a delegate. Now, this slide shows, it really breaks out the openings across the state. So for those of you coming from, like, what I would say the northern half of Wisconsin, there's a lot of spots open, and it's such a opportunity. So if you can see there, the districts that the WCC has are really broken out from 1 to 11. District 1 here has 20 openings this year. Likewise, then you go to District 2, has 14 on the northwest side. Again, very critical wilderness and habitat rich places, resources we want to protect. So I encourage everyone, where I am here, down here in the more populated areas, there's not quite as many openings. So to compare and contrast, there's 8 openings in District 11 where I am. So there's openings and again, a lot more opportunity probably the further north you go. But I really think it's important to think about this. And there is an off chance too, that if a spot is just open, and it might be, right? There could just be a vacancy. Take a look at that delegate list, because you could just reach out to the chair and it could be as simple as volunteering and getting on right now. The WCC sort of operating in the wild, wild west. Last year, they simply extended everybody's terms. So when you run as a delegate, you can run for a 2-year or 3-year term. Last year, they just kind of pretended like, we don't know what to do about elections, so we're just going to extend everybody that's here. But they still had people that left, people that retired, people that said, I'm out. So there are a number of vacancies. So again, if this is of interest to you, please reach out to me and I can try to get you the right place. But it is something to consider, or if you know somebody, it's a good opportunity to tap them on the shoulder. So with that, we are to my call of action. So I want to say first, thank you for everybody hanging in there with me. The first, and I think the easiest thing to do, is everybody mark your calendar, be ready to vote in that spring hearing starting on April 11th. Then one step further would be, if you are interested in the resolution process and getting your name out there and putting forth more progressive ideas, whether you write your own or you use a pre-written one that I can help get you, please let me know in the next few weeks. I have a very intricate spreadsheet where I'm tracking every resolution that we have in every 72 county breakdown. So let me know, but that is something that is coming up sooner than later on March 11th. And that's one of the reasons we had this meeting as quickly as we did. And then beyond that, consider it down the road, think about running for a delegate. I think that's where like our really big like tidal wave shift could happen within the WCC. And I mean, I think to take it this year would be phenomenal. So thank you so much. Please consider that. I'm gonna go ahead and we'll go to this. If you click one more time, I'm gonna end with a Teddy Roosevelt, right? A conservationist of his own and good friends with John Muir. He said, the wildlife and its habitat cannot speak. So we must, and we will. And that's very much the spirit that I deliver this to you. I think it's important that we all speak for those that can't and protect what we can for future generations. I think it's important, especially in the divisive environment that we find ourselves in not only the nation, but particularly our state. So please consider it. I hope I've given you enough information to get excited to want to be involved, because I think it's going to take a lot of people across the state wanting to really get involved and join forces with maybe other groups that haven't worked together, but really meant to be more of an overarching coalition of folks pulling together all in the same direction. So with that, let me take a look. I have just kind of moved through. Let's get to the chat. So what do we have here cooking?
Amy, we have a couple of questions. So first question we had was, how do you know if a resolution has already been submitted or covered in other counties?
Okay, so if a resolution has been submitted this year, you wouldn't, in the current year, you wouldn't really know unless you're working like with someone like myself, where I'm trying to kind of track and strategically make sure we're not overlapping. But that does happen. And I can tell you for experience, I submitted a resolution here in Waukesha regarding not hunting wolves with dogs. And I think 2 other citizens did as well. So it does happen. And that's not the worst thing, but that's why I'm kind of trying to, if we can, organize a little chaos and try to get people at least, so we kind of know what's going on in what county. So I hope that helps. Let's see here. I can try to see what other questions we have.
Another question here, Amy, was how do you run to be a delegate?
Okay, so how do you run to be a delegate? Well, in years past, you would go in person, and I'm told it was pretty easy. You would go and say a little bit about yourself and hopefully bring some friends. And as long as you got the popular vote, you were in. This year will be very different. And again, the Congress is still wrestling with how to do this. So matter of fact, I think there's a meeting tomorrow night. They're going to be talking about it. They have to figure out a way to do it online and do it securely. So I think it could be something like providing your name and maybe maybe a paragraph on yourself, and people will have to vote for you. But they are trying to figure out a secure way to do that, because really only people in your county should be voting for you. And so they're trying to figure out a way to make sure that, for example, if I was running, that only people in Waukesha are voting for me. So that's it. So let's see what else we got.
Amy, that's going to be, Steve here, that's going to be really hard. We're at end of January. If they're looking at an IT solution and they haven't started on anything yet, they're going to have to run something out of the box that can be certifiable.
Yeah, I don't know. Steve, it's very bureaucratic to say the least. And I had actually thrown them out a few suggestions. We'll see if anything sticks. They're really stuck on the security and how to verify. So they're looking at ways that they can have people enter in their driver's license and residency, and then get to their county to vote. So yeah, it may be later this year yet, but I know they are charged with doing it. I just don't know exactly what that process will look like. So that's why I kind of say it's going to be down the road a little bit, but we have such an opportunity that I want to make everybody aware of it.
Well, you bet. That, I guess I'd just like to add on there that where there's chaos, there's opportunity, right? Make sure you're at these meetings in April. At the very least, when you're looking at what 12,000 out of was that about 150 delegates per county that are voting, and I know Madison usually ran about 500 to 700. Milwaukee ran 500 to 700 when I attended down there. So you get the word out, and social media is such a gift today. And you can really make a lot of noise with I mean, I recognize there's a lot of names here, and people are starting to notice what's going on, and we'll get there.
Yeah, no,
Thanks,
absolutely, Steve, you're right. And I do think that online gives potentially our side a little bit of, kind of maybe a little bit of an advantage. And maybe because even I think anyone on the WCC, like it or not, would say that being in person was a barrier to voting. So being online, it really does give us an opportunity to spread the word and get people made aware. We can help even raise awareness of advocates in other counties to help support. So I think that's a real opportunity. And I'm seeing Mary Ellen, I do think a shift and change. Absolutely. We want to expand and enhance what they're already doing. I think it really is an opportunity to enhance what they're doing. So yes, thank you for that comment.
Amy,
yeah,
it's Megan. I have a question, because you were such a fantastic force with this last year with your organizational skills. I'm just wondering if there's a way maybe a weekly or bi-weekly mass email could go out with a chart saying what counties certain resolutions have been submitted in. Just thinking and how to organize a larger group than was done last year. So that's just a thought. So
no, that's a very good thought. And I think last year was such a sort of a shotgun approach in that I kind of started doing it like the weekend of with a few folks, and we were able to make some pretty good progress. So I think starting in January, hopefully we have a running start. And so, yeah, I'd absolutely, I can, I hope to be able to email this list as sort of, an engaged group that I can count on in terms of circulating what we have or what we need, and get things out there, get people aware of. Particularly, there are several resolutions that passed last year that we'd like to see put on the county resolutions to pass again this year, so we can kind of use that same 2-year 3-county rule again. Night hunting would be one. Term limits for WCC advisory committee members is another. There's a handful of those. So yeah, I think those are really the priority, and we can start to communicate that out a little bit more far and wide.
So Amy, Steve here again. When you get this resolution list, you're going to need some delegate representatives of this group in several counties to really give this weight, that when you can pass 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 counties with a resolution, that really gives it weight when it hits committee. So are you going to have a list of those provided, say, before the meeting, that we can grab that as boilerplate and maybe take our pick or talk to some folks in our representative county and be able to get the list on there, right, at 2 per person? Thanks.
Yeah, so I guess here's the thing. And matter of fact, Josh, if you want to back up to the slide that gives some of the resolutions that I have kind of pre-baked at this point, let me know if though any of those speak to you in a big way. Let me know. I can get those to you with instructions on how to submit once they finalize and get that open for the ability to submit the resolution online. The tracking, what I do is I have a spreadsheet with tabs and I will track. So if, for example, Steve, if you said, yeah, give me, banning chocolate bear bait and, banning, black bear hunting regulations, then I would mark you down for those 2 in, is it Polk County, and get you on, or Sawyer County, get you listed on both of those. So then I know that those don't need to be submitted in Sawyer County. So that's kind of how I was going to do it. And then I can kind of go from there. So then if someone else comes to me and they're also in Sawyer County, I'll say, oh, no, those have already been submitted. So we can try to spread out the resolution submittal that way. So I hope that helps.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So
Amy.
I can try to be the center point to track all of that and kind of try to manage it. I do want to certainly, let people, if you're interested, let me know. If you have something that speaks to you in addition to these, there's certainly no limit on suggestions we could make to our current DNR. But if it speaks to you, I think it's better, because then you're more passionate and then you're more likely then to follow it through in the fall. If it does pass and you go to those committee meetings, you can really say, look, this is important to me and this is why. I've got personal experience, or, I don't want any night hunting. I live near public land and it's a safety issue for my family, or whatever it might be. But I think if there's something here that is of interest, or you have something in mind, let me know, and then I can add it to this list and I can try to further circulate it as well. So let's see here. I see that Dylan said a note of, do you have any thoughts on how much the CC resolutions can actually accomplish with the DNR? Oh yeah, and given everything that we've got going. So it is an uphill battle. I mean, I'm going to keep it real with you, Dylan. I mean, it is an advisory board. They do not write law, but they have the attention of lawmakers. So there's that potential. The spring hearing provides interesting data, right, to lawmakers as well. So that in and of itself gets looked at. That's important. And I can tell you one thing that even like for the Sandhill crane hunt, one person that did not support it in their small committee that ultimately passed it, actually cited that the law proposal that came ultimately from Hunter Nation and Ted Nugent did not come from the WCC. So I think that there's some good reason to work with it, even though it's a grind. I mean, it's a slow grind. And after this meeting, I can send, they have some nice illustrations where it sort of shows the back and forth of what happens, but again, there's some snowball type mentality here, is when we can actually point to numbers and say, hey, 75% of the people that took the spring hearing survey were against night hunting on public lands. That's a good stat that we can use, that gets in the media. So I think there's benefits beyond, just changing the legislation, although there are a lot of times that we may need to do that. And that's going to be slow going with the gridlock and challenging dynamics, to say the least. So let's see here. I see we've got Adams County attendance for the county meeting around 40. Yeah, if you look at some of the votes by county, I mean, I think there was one county that had about 19 people voting. So there are some really ill-attended counties out there. So again, all the more reason for us to shake people out of all these different groups and alliances and connections that we have, so we can get more people. The more people involved, the better it is. It really, I mean, it boils down. It's going to be a better representation of our state citizens, which is what I think Aldo Leopold had in mind. So I hope this was simplified. It's a broad topic, and so I wanted to give just sort of the nuts and bolts. So thank you guys all so much. Margie, you're asking about the 2-year 3-county rule. Does it have to be exactly the same? It has to be the same or similar. So I would say as close as possible. I think you can make minor changes or alterations and it would still be considered similar. Similar is an obviously very subjective term. So the more you stretch it, the more you might run into some debate if it is or isn't. So I would say, again, kind of if you are trying to go that route, minor might be the best. And let's see here, Scott, we've got resolute. Oh, okay, yep. He's replied to Dylan. And then Mary Ellen, as a delegate, I'd like to make a comment to the group on a positive change focus. Yes, please, Mary Ellen, please jump right in.
Thanks. I did unmute myself. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm a Dane County delegate, have been for I guess the last 4 years or so, and I'm a retired environmental scientist, and I felt this was a great way to give back to my state. And I've got to tell you, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. And the positive note that I wanted to make here, I'm also chair of the statewide environmental committee for the WCC. And that's a group of about 20 people from all around the state, many of whom have been in the WCC for a long time. They're the old guard trappers and hunters and fishermen. But I'll tell you what, they recognize the importance of relating things to water quality and air quality and climate change. And they're so excited about being on that committee. Every time we have a committee meeting and review the resolutions that people are sending in, it's just so gratifying to me to see that happening. And we've had some pretty tough things go through the last couple of years. And the environmental committee is relatively new. I think 2013 it came into being. And that's because the WCC as a body has recognized that there is this shift in a lot of things going on that affect the resources, the wildlife and the fish and so on, and that have to do with water quality. So we've been dealing with things like climate change and pipelines and fossil fuel infrastructure. And one of my favorite conservation people in the whole world, Scott Hitta, is on here tonight too, and he's also on that committee. It's a heck of a group, and I just want you to know that we've got those guys working for you.
Mary Ellen, thank you so much. I appreciate you being on here. And like I said, I think there are really pockets of encouraging things that are happening. And that's another reason I know there are a few people that contacted me before this. They had questions about, well, 35 years ago. And, I know this as a group that, wanted to basically have a hunting season for feral cats. And I said, well, let's get involved. Let's change that. Right. And I think it is starting to change. And so I appreciate your comments, because I think that environmental group is a very progressive group, and I'd like to see that within all the advisory committees.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, to your point, there are, I want to say something like 20 some committees, and they range from every different type of wildlife to legislative to environmental, and it's all very important work. So once you become a delegate, you're able to raise your hand for certain committees that you'd like to be involved with, so that you can become involved in these issues and become an authority. I think that's where, when I think about some of the more environmentally friendly friends that I have, that's where we need to get involved. So with that, I think we are kind of coming to the end here. I appreciate there's a couple links being shared. I'm glad I was able to provide a little bit of insight on this. Again, I'm relatively new to understanding what the WCC is myself. I really only know the COVID version of the WCC. So it's been evolving. And this year in particular is going to be an outlier in terms of process. So I will keep you all very much appraised of what I know is happening and when. I'll do my best. You have my contact information, and please, let's stay in touch. Let's further this conversation. I can keep some emails going, and I certainly can have another touch base for the people that are interested in resolutions. We could dive more into that as we get closer to March. So thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you sharing time and space. I know everybody's got a gazillion video meetings every day. So thank you. I know it's probably been a long day. So thank you all so much, and for caring about our wildlife and our natural resources. With that, I will say goodbye and good night. Thank you all so much. I will be in touch with some follow-up information. So thank you.